all live in a state of perpetual thought. Our minds are magnificent engines of prediction, capable of charting complex courses through possible futures. Yet, this remarkable gift can become our greatest burden. We spend so much energy thinking not about what is happening right now, but about what might happen next week, or last year, or even 10 years from now. This constant projection into the unseen future creates a deep and pervasive anxiety. Our worries are often less about the things themselves than they are about the idea of those things. Ideas that exist only within the confines of our own skulls. Look around you. Everything in this moment, the steady rhythm of your breathing, the solid weight beneath your feet, the quiet hum of the world continuing, is all happening right now. Yet, how often do we truly experience it? We are so caught up in reviewing yesterday's mistakes or rehearsing tomorrow's difficult conversations that we lose the simple gift of the present moment. The sheer volume of these unseen thoughts is staggering. They accumulate silently, building a weight around our chests, tightening our shoulders, and distracting us from the immediate reality. This burden carries no physical appearance. It is purely cognitive, yet its effects are intensely real. It drains our reserves of calm and steals our peace. The modern world only accelerates this process. From overflowing inboxes that demand attention before we even wake up, to the ceaseless stream of news feeds that presents humanity's deepest failures, paired with fleeting moments of joy, our minds are constantly switched on, never permitted to simply rest. We feel compelled to anticipate every threat, every slight, and every potential setback, as if survival depends on perfect prediction. This exhausting state is not only mentally tiring, it alters our relationship with reality itself. It teaches us to live in the shadow of what might be wrong. The challenge presented by philosophy, particularly the wisdom passed down from Stoic thinkers, is profoundly simple, yet requires radical retraining. The fundamental problem is that we are mistaking concern for control. We treat hypothetical anxieties as if they were immediate crises, dedicating intense emotional energy to outcomes that may never materialize, or which are entirely outside the scope of our influence. Consider this. If you worry intensely about a future rainstorm, your mind vividly builds the image, the ruined outdoor picnic, the canceled event. This mental struggle is very real, accompanied by physiological stress. But when the storm doesn't arrive, all that intense effort was spent on nothing tangible. The energy expended in anticipation of difficulty is often wasted, leaving us depleted and unsatisfied even after the worst has passed. This chapter asks us to acknowledge the sheer power and peril of our inner landscape. We must become diligent observers of our own thoughts. We are not merely experiencing life, we are constantly creating narratives about life. These internal stories, the if only, the what if, the I should have, are powerful architects, building castles of worry on foundations made entirely of speculation. The key to finding freedom begins with separation. We must learn to differentiate between what is truly within our sphere of influence and what belongs to an infinitely larger, uncontrollable reality until we identify the boundary line, the point where my thought ends and the world's action begins. We will forever carry the unseen weight of all things that are not ours to manage. Therefore, the first step in recovering inner peace is not to stop worrying altogether. It is simply to observe asterisk, where asterisk the worry originates. Is this fear about a conversation you must have tomorrow? That's an outcome outside your direct control. Is this anxiety about a difficult choice you are facing right now? That's a process requiring action and judgment in the present moment. Learning to distinguish these two realms of concern is the monumental task that will free us from the invisible chains of future dread. We have spent time examining the exhausting habit of worry. We recognized that our minds often treat uncertain futures as definite threats. But true wisdom requires us to stop focusing only on what is wrong with the world outside, and instead look inward. To understand where our energy belongs, we must ask a simple but profound question. What can I truly own? Where does my sphere of control begin and end? The initial struggle feels uncomfortable. It forces us to acknowledge that much of life, the decisions others make, the weather above us, or even how our loved ones feel, exists entirely outside the boundary of our will. This lack of ownership is what creates the internal conflict. It makes us perpetually anxious about things we cannot touch, correct, or force into submission. Think of your breath for a moment. You do not command the air itself, nor do you control its movement in your chest when you are distressed. Yet, over many years, you have built an ability to notice that breath, to choose to slow it, or to steady it when panic rises. That capacity, that choice to manage your internal rhythm, is fundamentally yours alone. It is a piece of self-governance that nobody can take away. We often confuse control with capability. We believe that because we desire an outcome, like perfect traffic or approval from our peers, therefore it must be within our power to make happen. This assumption is the root of all distress. It is believing that reality should bend to our emotional needs. The ancient philosophers pointed us toward a clear division. We are responsible for two things: our judgments and our responses. Our judgments are the silent interpretations we apply to raw events. They are not the events themselves, but our immediate reaction to them. When something happens, it is merely noise in the external world. It becomes a source of suffering only when we clothe that noise with the judgment that it is terrible or intolerable. The hardest part is recognizing that your mind is constantly generating what-if scenarios. These are not genuine risks. They are mental rehearsals for disasters that may never occur. We expend emotional currency preparing for battles that happen only in the theater of our own thoughts. The disciplined practitioner learns to treat these future anxieties as mere hypotheses, interesting to observe but powerless to act upon. Consider the power inherent in choosing your attitude. When a conflict erupts, or when criticism lands unexpectedly, many people react reflexively with defensiveness, anger, or immediate shame. That reaction is automatic, it is habit. But we have the capacity to insert a pause. to create the space between the stimulus and the response. In that gap lies our sovereignty. The world can throw every difficulty at you, but it cannot touch your right to choose how you interpret that difficulty. This process requires daily discipline. It is not a one-time realization. It is a muscle we must exercise day after relentless day. We start by simply labeling what we are wrestling with. Is this worry about something external, like the economy or another person's mood, or is it rooted in how I am currently judging my own situation? This careful self-inquiry acts like a filter, draining the emotional weight from things that simply do not belong to us. The true measure of inner freedom, therefore, is realizing that your deepest ownership lies not in changing external circumstances, but in mastering the landscape of your own mind. You cannot control the wind, but you can always adjust the sails of your soul. This steady realization shifts our power source entirely. We move from being victims of unpredictable events to becoming architects of our inner peace. We began our journey by examining the overwhelming nature of worry. We saw how easily we can become prisoners to the future, spending precious mental energy on events that are not yet here and may never happen at all. This anxious preoccupation treats potential discomfort as a guaranteed crisis, depleting us before any real challenge even appears. It is this very habit of anticipating trouble that keeps us perpetually drained, forever looking over our shoulders at what might come next. The core shift required by philosophy is realizing that the bulk of human stress comes not from external events themselves, but from our internal struggle with those events. We spend so much time arguing with reality. We resist things simply because they do not align with the stories we have written for ourselves, stories of how the world ought to function. If a bad grade or unexpected traffic or another person's harsh words occurs, our immediate reaction is often profound emotional turbulence. We feel violated, judged, and cornered by forces outside of us. This strong emotional response tells us that these external occurrences are fundamentally threatening to our inner peace. We mistakenly believe that if we could only control the input, the bad weather, the difficult boss, the critical friend, then happiness would follow automatically. But here we must pause and introduce a vital principle: the division between what is within our sphere of influence and what remains utterly outside it. This is not meant to be an exercise in resignation, but rather an act of radical clarity. It asks us to shine a bright, unflinching light into the murky waters of our concern, separating facts from speculation. Consider your thoughts right now. A thought arises: I am worried about my career trajectory next year. This is a very real and deeply felt worry. But where does the actual power reside? Can you force the market to change? Can you command another person to recognize your worth? No. You can only control what passes through the gateway of your own mind and how you respond in this immediate moment. The ancient philosophers were masters at this mental sorting. They taught us that most of our suffering is not caused by external asterisk things, asterisk, but by internal asterisk opinions, asterisk about those things. We do not suffer from life setbacks. we suffer from the judgment we attach to them. We take a setback, like being criticized, and immediately wrap it in a story. This criticism means I am inadequate, that my efforts are pointless, that I deserve failure. The immediate internal conflict arises when we try to treat our interpretation as an undeniable fact. We confuse I believe this must be true with this is the reality. The truth, however, is far less certain and far more manageable than we imagine. Your judgment is your opinion. Your emotional reaction is merely a thought dressed up in urgency. The practical tool here is rigorous examination. When anxiety strikes, do not simply feel overwhelmed. Pause and become an objective investigator of your own mind. You must ask yourself 3 simple questions. First, is this event happening right now? Second, can I take any physical action on it in this instant? Third, does this require a decision or judgment from me? Let us look at concrete examples that plague the modern self. Take traffic congestion. It is a chaotic stream of vehicles, signals, and impatience, completely outside your control. The emotion rises, frustration, anger, a feeling of wasted time. But wait, you cannot change the speed of every car in this lane. Your action, however, remains yours. You can choose to play music, you can practice deep breathing, or you can use the time for quiet reflection. You have chosen how your internal world will interact with that uncontrollable outer chaos. Or consider another person's opinion. A comment, perhaps dismissive, perhaps hurtful, is launched into the air toward you. Your natural instinct is defensive, to fight back, to defend your record, to prove their error. This requires immense energy and often leads to deeper conflict. But remember that the source of the judgment is theirs. They are acting from their own limitations and fears. The judgment itself belongs entirely to them. What is yours? Your only domain is the integrity of your response. You can choose to accept it, acknowledge it as merely noise, and then pivot back to your own path. That decision, the silent choice to protect your inner ground, is everything. The dichotomy forces us into a difficult but liberating place of cognitive separation. We must consciously draw a line in the sand inside our minds. On one side are the raw events, the rain falling, the traffic stopping, the words being spoken. These are simply data points, neutral and indifferent to our feelings. On the other side are your conscious responses, your intention, your virtue, your measured reply, or perhaps silence. This line is unbreakable. It cannot be breached by worry, despair, or complaint. This process trains a discipline of focus. It redirects energy that was previously wasted arguing with fate, and instead directs it toward mastery over the self. We are not asked to live in ignorance of trouble. We are simply asked to stop mistaking our inevitable human anxieties for genuine sources of powerlessness. The wisdom is profound, yet remarkably simple. The deepest freedom is found when we cease trying to control what cannot be controlled and commit ourselves wholly instead to perfecting that which remains perpetually ours, the quality of our own mind. We have begun by recognizing the overwhelming weight of constant anxiety. We see it in the racing thoughts that project us into futures we cannot touch, and in the energy drained away from the present moment. We learned that worrying about tomorrow is an impossible labor. Our minds treat every potential outcome as a crisis, requiring immediate, exhaustive intervention. Next, we drew a clear line, the boundary between what belongs to us and what does not. We established that while we cannot control the weather outside the window, nor the sudden shifts in another person's heart or mind, we possess sovereign command over one thing: our response. This recognition shifted anxiety from merely predicting disaster to making an active choice of acceptance. And then we refined this boundary further, separating external events, the unexpected traffic jam, the harsh comment, the poor grade, from the deep sanctuary of our own internal judgment. We understood that these outside elements are neutral. They hold no inherent power until we assign meaning to them with our minds. Our suffering is not a byproduct of bad things happening, but rather a result of our private agreement to find fault in what simply is asterisk. These principles build towards a profound realization: the deep illusion of control. It is the most pervasive mental trick the human mind plays upon itself. We feel compelled to grasp every thread of life: the financial future, the praise of others, the perfect emotional state, believing that if we simply hold tight enough, we can manipulate reality into perfection. The truth is far more fluid and delicate than this desire suggests. Try to cup smoke in your hands the moment you exert force. It slips through your fingers. Try to push back against a strong current. The effort only exhausts you and moves you no closer to shore. This feeling of wanting to control everything comes from a deep place of fear, the fear that if anything deviates from our rigid plan, we will fall apart. We believe our worth, or perhaps our peace, is dependent on external factors remaining predictable and agreeable. We assign immense power to the unpredictable, the judgment of strangers, the whim of fate, the erratic emotions of those closest to us. This struggle against what simply is why we feel so perpetually drained. We are expending magnificent amounts of vital energy trying to fix a river that must simply flow. Our efforts often create more disorder than the original challenge did. The attempt to preempt every bad event or to perfectly sculpt another person's behavior is an endless, exhausting battle against natural law. The philosophical shift required here is not one of apathy, but of profound liberation. It is learning where the true source of power resides. That power does not come from prediction, nor from forceful intervention upon the world. It comes solely from acknowledging what we can accept and acting responsibly within that acceptance. To realize that most things, the decisions of others, global events, or even our own physical limitations, are simply outside the realm of our actionable control. When we embrace this limitation, something marvelous happens. The pressure valve releases. We cease viewing life as a complex machine that requires constant tuning and repair, and start seeing it instead as an unfolding natural process. Our role shifts from that of desperate architect to watchful participant. This does not mean abandoning effort entirely. Effort remains vital. We must work diligently, speak honestly, and strive for excellence in our own assigned tasks. But the scope of that effort narrows dramatically. We stop worrying about whether our efforts will be enough, or if they will achieve external perfection. Instead, we focus entirely on the quality of the action itself, on dedicating ourselves fully to the present task, doing what is right, regardless of the probable outcome. The illusion of power is merely the mistaken belief that the world should operate according to our internal desire for order and safety. Yet, life is defined by flux. It is defined by resistance, by unexpected detours, and by moments where perfect control is physically impossible. And within this constant flow, true strength resides not in resisting the current, but in learning how to swim with it, using the water's momentum rather than fighting against its pull. This moment calls for a fundamental readjustment of scale. We must train our minds to shrink the size of what we believe is controllable and expand the sheer magnitude of the things we can accept. This mental discipline, this willingness to say, I cannot change this, without it triggering panic or resistance, is where genuine freedom finally begins. We have spent time learning the difficult architecture of control. We recognized that much of what worries us, the traffic jam, the disagreement with a loved one, the economic downturn, exists outside the borders of our will. This recognition is itself an act of profound wisdom. But knowing where the boundaries are drawn is only the first step. Applying that knowledge in the moment requires more than understanding. It demands a pause. The frantic pace of modern life has trained us to react instantly. We are wired for response. When danger appears, we jump. When conflict arises, we defend. This speed means our thoughts often leap ahead, imagining consequences before they exist, reacting emotionally before the facts have fully cleared. It is in this perpetual rush that anxiety takes root. The art of the Stoic pause is nothing more than a voluntary slowing down. It is the intentional gap between an external stimulus and your internal response. It is not merely taking a breath. It is performing a mental intervention. When faced with something irritating or alarming, instead of immediately engaging the pattern of worry, you must create space. Think of your mind as being pulled by two forces, the immediate pull toward reaction and the steady current of rational thought. The pause allows you to orient yourself within that gap. It is a temporary withdrawal from engagement in order to gain clarity on what truly matters. This technique works by forcing a necessary moment of introspection. When something happens, a harsh comment, a missed deadline, an unfair judgment, your initial instinct is usually pain or defensiveness. That immediate surge must be met with the simple question, is this within my power? This single inquiry acts like a sudden spotlight, shining light into the chaos to reveal the true source of worry. The pause allows you to categorize the stimulus without judgment. You are not judging the comment itself, nor the traffic jam. You are simply identifying its boundaries of influence. Does the weather dictate your inner peace? No. Do other people's interpretations of your motives control your self-worth? Not at all. These external elements bounce off the invisible shield that is your chosen moment of reflection. The practice of pausing must become automatic, like breathing itself. Initially, it feels artificial, a forced interruption to the natural rhythm of anxiety. You might feel awkward or overly deliberate in these moments. This discomfort is normal. It signals that you are rewiring deep-seated habits. When your mind screams at you to just react, to fight back, to worry more, you must gently anchor yourself back into the space. Picture a river flowing quickly through its banks. The external event is the water, moving relentlessly forward. Your immediate reaction is perhaps resisting the current or trying to dam it up. The Stoic pause is like stepping onto the bank, pausing your physical action and simply observing the flow of the water without participating in its turmoil. You are acknowledging that you can observe the thing without being swept away by it. This discipline takes patience. It requires accepting that sometimes merely pausing will not solve the problem. The harsh criticism will still land, or the traffic will still back up. But the goal is never the absence of difficulty. The goal is to change your relationship with that difficulty. The paused reaction changes the consequence from emotional fallout to intellectual exercise. We learn that a thought, by itself, is neutral. It is merely a collection of electrical signals in the brain. When we react automatically to external events, those thoughts gain massive power and shape our immediate suffering. But when we insert the pause, we reclaim authorship over these internal signals. We treat them not as gospel truth, but as raw data that can be processed and filtered. The process unfolds like this. First, recognition of the event. Second, the intentional slowing down, the pause itself. Third, the application of the self-check question. Is this truly mine to change? Only after completing these 3 steps do you formulate an appropriate response, one rooted in reason rather than reflex. This cultivated stillness is not passive acceptance. It is active mastery. It is the power gained by withholding your emotional ascent to chaos. Embracing the Stoic pause means building a fortress around your inner citadel of self. You are training your mind not to avoid difficulty, but to navigate it from a position of unshakable calm. It is realizing that while you cannot always control what happens to you, you can absolutely control the duration and intensity of your internal suffering. And that capacity for conscious pause, that moment between stimulus and response, is perhaps the most potent freedom humanity possesses. Begin today by finding small opportunities for this pause. When you feel a spike of unnecessary worry about something minor, stop. Breathe fully and ask, is this genuinely within my ability to influence right now? By cultivating this single, profound moment of silence amidst the noise, you begin the remarkable journey toward emotional self-sovereignty. This pause is your anchor back to reality and into wisdom. We have traveled a long distance, examining the boundaries of our own will and realizing that much of the world remains outside our immediate grasp. We learned to pause, to question the source of distress by asking, is this within my power? This practice gave us the first breath of freedom. But freedom is not merely observing external chaos, it requires an internal renovation. The true battleground for peace is not in the streets or in the opinions of others. It resides here within the silent theater of your mind. It lives in the whispers you carry from moment to moment, the self-talk that builds worry brick by worried brick. Think back on how often you have found yourself caught in a repeating cycle of worry. Perhaps it was anticipating a difficult conversation, or maybe worrying about a professional outcome weeks away. In these moments, our minds function like prophets of doom, weaving complex narratives based entirely on what may never happen. We live perpetually in the what if, constructing elaborate futures that serve only one purpose: to feel anxious right now. The great challenge we face is learning to become historians of our own thoughts, rather than mere participants in their drama. The old script whispers doubts. It insists upon the certainty of worst-case scenarios. It commands us with rigid structures. If this fails, then I am nothing. Or, I must respond immediately, or everything will fall apart. These internal dictations are not truth, they are habits of worry. And like any habit, they can be unlearned. The work now is one of deep rewriting. It means understanding the difference between a thought, which is merely an electrical signal passing through your mind, and a belief which you choose to grant authority. A raw thought might say, "They won't appreciate this." That thought is just noise. But if we allow it to become a belief, we are forced into the painful action of preemptive disappointment. We must intercept these scripts before they take hold. When that anxious prediction arises, the imagined confrontation, the feared rejection, we do not argue with the thought, we simply observe its form. We label it, this is a future worry. Or, more clearly, this is my scripting mechanism at work. By naming it, by giving it distance, we strip it of its immediate power to dictate emotion. Consider the common use of absolute language in our inner monologue. I must, always, never. These words are powerful shackles. The script built on must is inherently flawed because life rarely adheres to a perfect schedule or emotional arc. By removing the word must, we introduce necessary flexibility. We change the directive from an unbendable law of nature into a gentle preference or a chosen goal. This process demands relentless self-interrogation, not of external facts, but of internal convictions. When you feel that sudden surge of dread, pause. Do not react immediately to the emotional peak. Instead, mentally ask 3 questions. 1. Where does this worry begin? 2. What evidence do I have that this future event is fixed or inevitable? And 3. What choice do I have right now that allows me to gently let go of its outcome? The transformation begins when we understand that our power lies entirely in the space between the stimulus and the response. The external world merely offers an event, a difficult email, a sudden detour, unwelcome criticism. But it is us who writes the reply. We are not automatons reacting to gravity. We are authors choosing the next paragraph. This mental discipline feels unnatural at first. It is like going back to arithmetic after years of relying on faulty intuition. The old, worried script is deeply ingrained because our culture praises us for predicting and preventing every potential disaster. But true wisdom shows us that prevention through exhaustive worry is often more exhausting than acceptance through quiet resilience. We are learning to replace the anxious narrative with a measured one anchored firmly in the present moment. Instead of, if I fail this task, my entire life collapses, we rewrite it. I will do my best work with the skills and knowledge I possess right now. The outcome is an externality that I accept, regardless of what it brings. The inner script must shift its allegiance. It must move away from controlling things to simply doing your utmost. It must understand that effort itself is a moral good, distinct from result. You exert yourself fully, you operate with integrity, and then you release the need for definitive certainty. This rewriting process builds what we call mental sovereignty. It means that while life will continue to present messy, unpredictable challenges, the traffic jams, the unexpected losses, the sharp words of a friend, these events will no longer have the power to derail your internal peace. You become the steward of your own judgment, recognizing that although you cannot control the wind, you can always calibrate your sails with wisdom and intention. This mastery is not about becoming emotionless. It is about ensuring that only reasoned choice remains in command of your deepest self. We have spent time learning the weight of worrying about what we cannot control. We began by identifying the lines that divide our inner world from the external chaos, realizing that most of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from how we choose to judge them. We found freedom in pausing, in asking ourselves if a difficulty truly rested within the sphere of our personal power. But recognizing this boundary is only the first step. True liberation requires something deeper. It demands letting go. To be unattached does not mean to be passive or to be cold. It means finding a profound and powerful sense of non-ownership over outcomes. Our minds are masterful architects of expectation. We build intricate mental structures around desired results, a career milestone, the approval of a loved one, a perfect day's routine. These structures give us a feeling of safety, but they also create immense tension. Why? Because by fiercely wanting something to happen a certain way, we attach our sense of self-worth and emotional stability to that unstable future point. The pain we feel when things go wrong is often not the pain of the loss itself. It is the searing pain of finding that our precious plan has been disrupted. We treat desired outcomes as if they were possessions, things we can hold tightly, secure from harm. Yet, life itself insists that nothing can be held forever. It flows, it shifts, and it changes hands without notice. Consider the metaphor of the stream. If you try to cup water in your hands, its liquid nature ensures that every attempt to contain it fails. You hold only for a moment, and then it slips through your fingers. This is what happens with our desired outcomes. We approach life as if we could capture success, happiness, or even peace itself within the confines of our rigid expectations. And this struggle, this futile effort to physically control the trajectory of other people's choices or the movements of fortune, is what exhausts us and ultimately causes deep emotional pain. Non-attachment is thus not apathy. It is a radical trust in process. It is acknowledging that the universe, life itself, operates with a vast complexity far beyond our current ability to map or manage. Our role, then, is not to steer the river, but simply to observe its flow and understand where we can find solid ground for ourselves. This philosophy asks us to redefine what it means to care. True care does not involve obsessing over the guarantees of tomorrow. It involves giving our utmost effort in the present, doing the task with excellence, listening with full attention, responding with integrity, and then gracefully accepting whatever happens next. We do everything we can, and when the inevitable outcome arrives, we release the need to dictate it. The mind must learn a profound act of separation. It must stop linking my identity so tightly to what happened. When we are attached, we believe that if X doesn't happen, then we will suffer deeply, that our value is conditional upon external validation or success. This belief creates crippling anxiety because the world is inherently unpredictable and fundamentally unfair. To let go means recognizing that your worth as a human being, and indeed your inner peace, exists independently of any single achievement, relationship status, or passing moment of luck. It anchors us to our core self, which remains steady even when everything around it shifts wildly. Our true possession is our judgment, our intention, and the manner in which we greet reality. The path to this non-attachment requires gentle practice. When you find yourself gripped by anxiety about an unchosen future, a conversation that must go well, a meeting that must yield results, pause, take 3 deep breaths, and then mentally recite this truth: I will dedicate my best efforts here and now. The rest is outside the boundary of my immediate control. I release the need for certainty. This gentle act of surrender is incredibly empowering. It takes away the exhausting burden of preemptive worrying, freeing up tremendous mental energy that can instead be used to improve your character, enhance your focus, or cultivate deeper compassion for yourself and others. We are asked not to live in a state of constant vigilance, guarding our delicate plans against misfortune. Instead, we learn the profound strength found in letting go, the power of accepting what is, and knowing that acceptance does not mean resignation. It means radical peace. This freedom from desperate attachment allows us to move through life with an unburdened spirit, ready for whatever form reality takes next. We have journeyed far from the quiet of theory. We have learned that our greatest struggles do not come from the chaos outside us, but from the restless arguments we wage inside our own minds. The philosophy has been profound, yet wisdom is only truly earned when it meets the grit of daily life. The challenge now, therefore, is one of persistent practice. It is about moving beyond understanding into action. Philosophy without application is merely poetry. Application without reflection is exhausting repetition. We must make this ancient discipline a habitual rhythm, a small win repeated day after day. This toolkit is not a single cure for worry, but rather a collection of immediate mental skills designed to interrupt the automatic cycle of anxiety. Consider the mundane friction points of life, the unexpected delay in traffic, the blunt comment from a colleague, the realization that plans have irrevocably changed. In these moments, our old habits surface like smoke. We instantly reach for worry, trying to predict the failure or argue against the injustice of it all. This reactive mindset is dangerous because it pulls us back into the belief that we must somehow control the uncontrollable. The Stoics taught us that self-mastery is not about perfection. It is about minimizing the distance between a challenging stimulus and our reasoned response. It is about creating tiny, intentional gaps in our reaction time, the pause. Let us practice this small win technique with immediate focus. When you are stuck in traffic, for instance, resist the urge to instantly curse or criticize the flow of other drivers. That thought process, that anger, is it within your control? No. The initial sight of the bottleneck is external, but the choice to feel frustration, the decision to mentally spiral into resentment, that remains entirely yours. We train ourselves to simply name the feeling. I am experiencing frustration. This simple naming strips the emotion of its power and returns authorship of the moment to you. This works when a disagreement occurs with another person. The other person's words are a product of their own mind, operating on beliefs that may be deeply flawed or poorly expressed. To react defensively is to accept those poor expressions as truth. Instead, we pause and we filter. We ask, what portion of this interaction belongs to my judgment? It is the interpretation I place upon their carelessness. The initial comment might be harsh, but only my assent to its severity makes it hurtful. This small shift from reacting to analyzing the reaction is a win. We are essentially training our focus to become highly selective. We are learning to accept reality in chunks, chunk by chunk, moment by moment. When life throws us unexpected turbulence, instead of attempting a single grand fix, we acknowledge only the piece we can handle right now. Just this breath, just this decision to listen without preparing a rebuttal, just this ability to observe the event as if watching it unfold through a clear pane of glass. The power of these daily wins is that they accumulate. Like building muscle through small weights, rather than lifting once too heavy, consistency builds deep, resilient calm. Each time you manage to pause when impulse urges panic, each time you choose observation over participation in the drama, you are retraining your neural pathways. You are subtly yet profoundly redefining what control means. It does not mean absolute control over outcomes. We know better than that. It means finding absolute ownership over the quality of our internal state while external things are unfolding. It is the recognition that regardless of how badly the world acts, or how frustratingly unpredictable human nature remains, we always retain the citadel of our own mind. So, let us commit to this disciplined approach. Do not wait for a crisis to practice philosophy. Look for the small frictions, the little moments when irritation bubbles up, or worry flickers in your mind about an unimportant tomorrow. Treat those moments as miniature training grounds. See them for what they are, free lessons in emotional discipline. Accept that you will fail, you will lapse back into old habits of prediction and panic. But with every fall, the simple act of noticing it, of admitting, I am worrying right now, is a massive victory. It is the first step toward freedom. Because by applying this toolkit consistently, we are not merely coping with worry, we are building immunity to chaos. We are constructing a life where our peace is not dependent on perfect circumstances, but entirely reliant upon the steady, unwavering virtue of our own reasoned judgment. We have spent chapters examining the boundaries of our power. We learned to distinguish between the events that rush at us from outside and the choices that spring forth within us. The work is often hard, requiring us to question deeply ingrained patterns, the need to predict, the impulse to correct, the desire for everything to be orderly. Yet, even with all this clarity, a residual ache remains. It is the phantom grip of expectation. We want life to be simple. We wish our internal script were flawless and predictable, like an ideal tragedy written only in gold leaf. But that vision of perfection is itself a profound misunderstanding of existence. To demand flawlessness from reality is to invite disappointment, for reality, by its very nature, resists neat categorization. Life does not operate on linear philosophical principles. It operates in glorious, messy gradients of human experience. The greatest challenge remaining is the courage to accept imperfection. It is easier, certainly, to rail against a problem, to designate an obstacle, and plan the perfect structural correction for it. This provides a momentary surge of false agency. We build little mental bunkers around our expectations, assuming that if we just guard ourselves well enough, misfortune cannot touch us. The Stoics did not teach us how to build walls. They taught us how to stand in the open square and accept the weather as it comes. They showed us that struggle is not an interruption of life, but a fundamental component of what makes life lived. To expect smooth sailing is to sail nowhere at all. Think for a moment about anything truly significant, a monumental piece of art, a great athletic performance, or even a genuine human connection. Was it born without struggle? No. It was forged in resistance. The metal needed the hammer. The song required the dissonance before the harmony could be appreciated. Difficulty is not merely something that happens to us. It is the crucible where character is revealed and refined. The inner conflict here is deeply personal. We are excellent at criticizing other people's imperfections, readily pointing out their flaws or their poor judgment. We accept failure in others as evidence of their deficiency, which somehow absolves us of similar scrutiny. But when we look inward, when the mirror shows us our own inadequacies, our regrettable mistakes, the things we said that should never have left our mouths, we tend to become cruel judges. We treat ourselves with a far harsher expectation than we would ever bestow on a friend. This is where true philosophical empathy must begin. The self must be treated not as a masterpiece awaiting unveiling, but as an evolving work under constant construction. Every stumble, every moment of emotional excess, every judgment call that falls short of ideal will simply become raw material for the next attempt at being human. We must redefine what success means in our personal lives. Success is no longer achieving a perfect outcome. Success is showing up consistently, flaws and all, recognizing the mistakes before we deepen them, and choosing to correct the trajectory immediately after the fall. It is finding the discipline not in avoiding pain, but in responding intelligently to it. The acceptance of imperfection demands a radical shift from judgment to observation. When disappointment strikes, when plans dissolve into chaos, when people disappoint us, or when our own efforts meet unavoidable resistance, the instinct is to immediately label that event as failure. This narrative of failure creates suffering far worse than the original setback. Instead, we practice viewing these events simply as data points. They are information about the world, not condemnations of our worth. The fact that a project collapsed taught us something about structural integrity. The unkind words spoken to you revealed something about the speaker's internal turmoil, nothing of yours. And your own mistake simply confirms the undeniable truth that you are fallible. The beauty of life does not lie in its adherence to perfection, but in its resilience. It is a continuous cycle of breakage and mending. Our task, then, is to shed the suffocating belief that we must be immune to pain or capable of flawless execution. Instead, we cultivate what the Stoics might call inner robustness, a sturdy spirit that understands that falling down is merely a momentary state, not a permanent identity. This embracing of messiness allows for true growth because it removes the terror surrounding failure. If failure ceases to be an endpoint and becomes simply one chapter in a vast book, we are suddenly free to write with greater audacity. We stop fearing the risk of looking foolish or the sting of inadequacy, knowing that these moments are not wounds to our soul, but marks upon our journey. To walk through life accepting its inherent messiness is to accept the human condition itself, the beautiful, chaotic entanglement of passion and reason, limitation and boundless potential. This acceptance is not passive resignation. It is an active, muscular choice. It requires us to meet the imperfection of today with a sense of gentle courage, knowing that tomorrow's inevitable wrinkles will only make the portrait richer. We have spent this journey learning to distinguish the solid ground of our choices from the shifting sands of external events. We learned that much of our worry is not about what might happen, but simply about imagining things we cannot touch, cannot command, and often should not try to command. The persistent habit of looking backward with regret or rushing forward with anxious prediction keeps us perpetually disconnected from the only moment that truly exists. The now, our greatest challenge, therefore, is learning to anchor ourselves back here, into this quiet center where all true agency resides. Our minds are remarkably powerful machines for pattern recognition. They predict danger, they plan meals, and they calculate routes across crowded streets. But when this remarkable power turns inward, it becomes a trap. We become prisoners of hypothetical thought, spending precious mental energy worrying about choices we have not yet made or consequences that may never arrive at all. This constant projection steals the simple clarity of being. The goal is not merely to stop thinking negative thoughts, that task alone would be impossible and unnatural. The true aim is a state of disciplined awareness, a recognizing pause between the stimulus and our initial reaction. It is about observing the mind as if it were a strange cloud passing across a vast, clear sky. You are the sky, and the worry is just the transient cloud. Think back to the concept we discussed, the division between what is yours to control and what is not. We learned that worrying about others' opinions is often like trying to mend the weather. It requires immense energy with zero return, because you cannot unilaterally change the climate of another person's mind or the unpredictable flow of life itself. The past belongs only to memory. It can inform us, but it cannot be changed. The future belongs only to possibility. It is a realm built entirely of what ifs and maybe nots. Neither domain offers any true ground for action. If we spend our days there, we are never here. The present moment, however, is the single point where everything converges. It is the deep breath you just took. It is the feeling of your feet on the floor. It is the simple act of paying attention to a single conversation without planning the reply or regretting what was said moments before. This steady reality is our fortress. To return to the present means recentering all available energy. It requires us to treat every incoming thought, be it worry, panic, accusation, or anticipation, not as truth, but merely as data, as observations to be cataloged and understood. A mental act of non-identification. You are having a worrisome thought. You are not the worried thought itself. This process is an ongoing meditation, a continuous practice that resists the natural pull toward distraction and worry. When anxiety surfaces, perhaps prompted by traffic, or a ringing phone, or a demanding email, the instinct will be to immediately react, to analyze the threat, and to try to solve it instantly. This rapid response puts us back in the cycle of external fixation. Stoic pause is therefore not merely stopping. It is redirecting asterisk. It means using that micro moment, that split second between sensing discomfort and formulating a panicked thought, to ask yourself a guiding question. Is this immediate concern rooted in something I can influence right now with my conscious action? If the answer is no, then gently, but firmly, return your focus to the simple facts of the present moment. The world will continue its business regardless of how worried you become. The sun will rise over imperfections. Traffic will still be slow on days when you feel most impatient. Mastery arrives when we realize that our peace is not dependent on a perfect external arrangement, a clear path, predictable outcomes, or the approval of others. Our inner calm must become self-sustaining. To live in the present means accepting reality as it presents itself, messy, unpredictable, and inherently nonlinear. It means cultivating radical acceptance for the current condition, the slow speed, the muted color, the unexpected interruption, and choosing to act from a place of reasoned response rather than reactive panic. This choice is the highest freedom. It is here, in this small, fleeting window of now, that we find our true power. Not in fixing the past or dictating the future, but simply in inhabiting the moment completely. Breathe into it, let go of what was, and let go of what will be. There is only the breath, and there is only the choice to greet this second with open awareness.